So as you can see from the screen, strategic planning has 7 phases. And from these 7 stages, today we'll be discussing on phase 3, which is situational analysis. In this phase, there are 3 major tasks of situational assessment that we need to consider and take it into note of it. So these 3 things, the first one is that review the history and current scope and the scale of operations. And particularly when we are reviewing the history and the current scope of our organization is very important. So knowing the past and the current situation or history of our organization would help us to come up with good assessment for our strategic planning. And secondly, we need to gather new information. Particularly, we need to scan our environment, what is available and what is not available. Not only that, again, we need to take the tool SWOT analysis, by basically about the strengths of our organization in the past and the present, and again the weaknesses of our organization of the past and the present, and even what we are hoping in the future, and again the opportunity that the organization that we belong to, and again the threat or the threats or the challenge. All those might help us to come up with a good information, and it might help us to assess our situation and our environment. And finally, we have just done that one. We can just summarize the findings. So these are the 3 major tasks that we need to take into note about situational assessment. So again, in this step, in phase 3, we're doing a situational assessment. We need to also review the history and the current scope and the scale of operation, what we have seen already. When we are doing this to prepare history and descriptive profile of operations, like key events in the organization's development in timeline format, and list all specific program and activities and the services that we are doing, and prepare on infrastructure profile. So working towards all those things might help us to understand in a better way our environment, and that also actually helps us to come up with a good plan for the organization that we are aiming for. And again, in this situational analysis, we need to come across to articulate previous and current strategies. What kind of strategies the organization did follow and did use? And then what kind of strategy should we use for the coming days and the years and the months? So if you do that, that might also help us to come up with the proper way of assessing our environment and our situation. So in this case, we need to review the history of the organization and how did the strategy was in the past and the current strategies. And we can just also discuss the effectiveness of the strategy and its implication for the future. So what were the strategies that gave effectiveness and efficiency for the plan that we had, and at the same time, what kind of implication can we draw for our future plan? So those are how we can just begin to articulate the previous and the current strategies. And again, we need to use again SWOT analysis. This is very important, particularly about the strengths of the organization in the past and the present, and the weakness of the organization that might help us to achieve our objectives, and all the opportunities, both external and internal opportunities that we do have actually to achieve our objectives. And again, what are the threats in terms of economy, in terms of politics, in terms of social, and so much more, finances, administration, and the capacity, and all the government issues? All those also might help us to come up to assess our situations in one way or that. And once we do identify our environment and our situation, and when we do assess that one, it might be a good input for our planning in one way or other. So this is how can you see in a grid of situational analysis. So there is a situational analysis. You can analyze internal analysis and that strengths and weakness, and external analysis, opportunity and a threat. So in such a way, you can just come with strengths with weakness, opportunity with threat, and again, strengths with opportunity, weakness with threats. So you can just, by crossing, you can just come across to analyze your situations. So again, in this situational analysis, in this phase 3, we need to gather information from internal and external stakeholders. So that's very important. We do not just only look for only specific areas, but we need to diagnose and investigate all the internal stakeholders in order to come to understand what is available and what is not available. And at the same time, we need to involve different group of people in our gathering information for the appropriate planning. So those staff might be paid and volunteer and the board, and again, any person might within the organization, particularly as a stakeholder, we can just diagnose in terms of its strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. That might help us to come up with what? Good information gathering. So this involvement could take also place a single retreat during which the group goes through a SWOT analysis and whatever, as you can see in the book, the worksheet, that is one of the examples and a template you can just follow in order to do how you can just accomplish in situational analysis by using those tools and methods in SWOT analysis. So there are four actually dimensions for organizations that need SWOT analysis. There is a mission, how well we are achieving our mission and how could we have greater impact. And the finances, I think this is very important for us to consider. And again, we have seen also in the past strategy planning process, all these four elements. So administrative capacity and the governance, all of them are very important, you know, for the fulfillment of the organization's need. If you do not have all these four elements, we may not achieve in any way. So even in our organizational need, in order to meet, we can use those skills, SWOT, strengths, weakness, and opportunity and a threat. We can come up with this dimension, and this might help us to come up with a good way of what? Assessing our environment. So the SWOT analysis, the process is that, you know, you can just begin by brainstorming activity that seeks to uncover the answer to four questions. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? So you are not pointing about others or on other things, but you can begin as, you know, what are our strengths and the weakness and opportunity threats to achieve in a better way. So once you identify that one, it helps you to come to know all the strengths and the weaknesses and opportunities and the threats that is available around you. And that might be a great input as we are assessing our environment and the situations. Again, once we have found this one, so the process must be what? Led by a neutral facilitator. So people might not be biased in one way or the other for various reasons. And again, must be free from any editorial issues. So whatever information is just available, we need to take it as is. So there is a time to make editorial things. So at this step, all the information should be just gathered and take it as it is. And again, properly tracked, use different color markers and a flip chart. So whenever people are giving us all the strengths and weaknesses, opportunity threats, we need to jot down, and we don't need to improve their thoughts. So we have to just put in a list out and use all the means in order to gather that information. That might help us a lot. So that's how we can just do with the internal stakeholders. In regard to gathering information from the external stakeholders, we can also follow the same format. But one of the things we can use in this step is that gathering inputs from external staff always improve the quality of what? Strategy planning process. Why? In regard to the internals, there might be a possibility of what? Bias in one way or the other. But when we come to the external stakeholders, they are free. So nothing can, you know, embarrass them or to give their feedback in regard to strengths and opportunities and threats and whatever they want to forward when they are asked to answer. So that's one of the things that we need to also follow and gathering information from the stakeholders. As we are working with the stakeholders in situational analysis or in situational assessment, look to consider this political, what kind of political is they can. So in relation to what? Our organization, our mission statement, our vision statement, our core values, do they align, that might be a hindrance, a threat in terms of politics, in terms of economy. What kind of finance do we have? And what about any link with the economical issues? If there is any kind of economical crisis, so how can we handle? So how can we just come out from that? So all those things are some of the things we can just browse, especially when we are doing situational assessment. So social, technological, legal, environmental. So all those things will be addressed through external analysis. So as you can see strengths and opportunities, and weakness with opportunities, and strengths with threats, and weakness with threats. So you can just in such a way how one feeds the other and how another fits the other. So in such a way, we can just come to do what? Make analysis of our situation through SWOT analysis. So we need to gather information from the documents and other resources. It's not only gather information or make our situational analysis from internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, but also we need to refer documents, different documents. What kind of things, any kind of document that might help us, our organization, in one way or the other. So key trends in the field in which the organization operates, plans and attributes of funds, demographic change within the target group, regulatory changes, all those things need to be addressed when we are just doing gathering from documents and other resources. That's very important. So it's not only rely on external and internal, what does the document say? And what kind of documents are available. And once we just begin to work towards those documents, we may have enough information and we can just begin to assess our environment. That's where we need to just work toward that. So as we are doing that, there are different rounds. How can we just follow? At the first round, add points for each statement and look for common issues that we do have as we are dealing with all those strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats, and collect into categories and the total points, identify the top 4 or 5. So look, if you do have 20 links on strengths, you can just come up with what? Which one is prioritized? Which comes first and which comes next? And when we come up with weakness, if you have 35 points, you can list all them and then you can give what? Number. Which one is the right one and applicable one and which one is not. So from both internal and from both external and at the same time from external, from documents as well. So we can list out and prioritize those points which align with our existing organization or an imagining organization so that we may come up with a good planning document. And the second round, what we can do that, take the 4 or 5 issues identified during the first round and ask each of the following questions. So once out of 20, if you have come up with 5 primarily issues or things that we are supposed to do, if we want to involve in our planning document, then we can ask these questions. By asking this question, also we can examine whether it is the right way of research or the right way of document or a situation or the applicable for our planning that we are aiming for. So that's how we can do. So as we are summarizing this phase, a situational analysis phase 3, we need to just follow before we just leave this phase 3 in the planning committee and should summarize the data collected. So if you have a group of people, all the information from stakeholders and from external stakeholders and from the documents, and we need to come up with a group of people or with a certain group of people, and they need to come up with with the kind of lens or with the kind of way of just doing it, summarize what has been collected or what has been done. And these are what they are going to do. So organize the data around the framework of mission, finance, administrative capacity, and governance. These 4 areas are must to be addressed because they are very crucial and essential in our planning program as a center in our planning project, and any organization should follow and have. And none of organization will be out of this. And again, organizing the data around the strategy issues identified at the beginning of your planning process, and use structures to summarize your findings. So if you do this, we can just do it and fulfill what phase 3 actually requires and demands as we are just proceeding to the next phase. That's all. So thank you.